I spent a little bit of time talking about just an overview about why the work that you're doing in alignment with our work we think is so important and what we need to do to convince Hoosiers of that as well. And then we'll hear from the panel a little bit more about specifically what's happening in Monroe County. I'll have a chance to come back and talk about what the commission does to align our efforts with the efforts that you just heard about, and then we'll leave plenty of time for questions and participation from you as well. Sound like that'll work? So let me begin a little bit. We've inundated you with materials, I can see, which we always do. The good news is, Jason just told me, Jason's our associate commissioner, and he just told me we had to do is our third printing of Reaching Higher, Achieving More. We also have our return on investment report that's there with you as well. Endorsed, I might say, by your own Dan Peterson, who's here with us in the front of the room. Dan is a member of the commission and represents this part of the state, but even more importantly understands that as a member of the Commission for Higher Education, you actually look at the needs of the state as well. So he brings the unique perspective of this part of the state and understands higher education, and especially the need to align our efforts in higher education with the needs of the workforce. So Dan, thanks for making the effort to be here with us today. Let me mention just a moment about the commission a little bit, because a lot of people know a lot about the superintendent of public instruction. It's an elected position, so that person campaigns. You know, we all tend to understand more about the K-12 part space than we do higher ed maybe. But I serve actually at the pleasure of a 14-member commission, of which Dan is one. The members of the commission are appointed by the governor. There's one for each congressional district, 3 at large, 1 faculty, and 1 student member. Dan and his colleagues serve for 4 years each term, and the student and the faculty serve 2-year terms. So I think the good news is that we have a highly engaged commission, people who really understand why these issues are so important, and then are able to convey that, I think, to their own constituencies, either geographical or business or educators or community leaders, all of whom are represented in the steering committees and the groups that we have who come together for these, to promote these efforts. We really talk a lot about why this is important and why making sure that Hoosiers understand that education beyond high school is more important than ever. I sometimes am misunderstood when I say this, but I sometimes say, you know, hard work is not enough. And hard work in the past was enough. If you lived in Indiana and you had a good work ethic and you showed up for work and you did what you were supposed to do, you were able to enter the middle class and take care of yourself and your families. The reality is hard work is as important as ever, it's just not enough. You now need to have credentials and skills beyond high school. And we're making great progress. We just have a long way to go, and we're trying to convey this sense of urgency. Not surprisingly, the goals that we have as a state are shared by other states as well. So we don't have a corner on the market for making sure that more people understand the importance of careers and education beyond high school and the importance of career pathways. But in that regard, we actually have we've increased our high school graduation rate, as I know that you have in this corner of the state as well. So clearly people understand that high school graduation is key. Let me be blunt as I say this to groups when we go around, and I hope you will say this as well. Dropping out of high school provides no career pathway. And you may know a few people in your life, or young people may say, well, I know so-and-so who did this and wasn't that great. Well, that will be an exception. And we don't make policy, especially education policy, based on exceptions. So we start with the very clear statement that dropping out of high school provides no career pathways. And then we recognize that graduating from high school and moving right into a career can be important and can provide career pathways, but most likely it will be if you get your high school diploma and a credential of some sort as well. So you leave high school able to enter into industry or a career with some sort of a credential. So if that's the pathway, and as you know, we hear a lot about the governor talking about the redesign of career and technical education aligned with sectors of the economy where we need those folks. So we talk a lot about that. But not surprisingly, because we're the Commission for Higher Education, we talk about credentials beyond high school, and we talk about that in multiple ways. We believe that it's more important to have more four-year baccalaureate degrees and graduate degrees, but that's not all that we need. We talk about associate degrees and the importance of associate degrees, especially as they are aligned, once again, with workforce needs. We talk about one-year certificates. If you get a one-year certificate in a sector of the economy that's growing, you can enter the middle class and have career pathways as well, and workforce credentials as well. So lest you think that the Commission for Higher Education believes that only four-year degrees will ensure success beyond high school, we think they're important. We think that they are one of several of a portfolio of kinds of degrees and credentials that you can have. So when we talk about our big goal of 60% of Hoosiers holding quality post-secondary credentials, we mean all of those. So I think what that is clear, that people start hearing that differently in an audience. Because they then know that if they want to enter into a career, they know how to do that. And then the important part is to talk about career pathways for people along the way. The reality is very few people will remain in the job that they begin in. They are likely to have, between the ages of 19 and 39, 8 to 10 job changes. Now those may not be career changes, but job changes. And so that means that you have to make it clear to students, and equally importantly, to returning adults, the value of have those career pathways. So we have more people graduating from high school. We have more people attending college than ever before. In fact, we're above the national average in that way. But it points then to what our challenge is. And our challenge is to get more people to complete. It is the goal, the prize is not entering college. Or the prize, the goal is getting a credential so that it improves the life of the individual and consequently the life of the state and the value that we have as an economy as well. So we need to make sure that more of our students are ready for college. We're going to talk about that as we talk about some of our metrics a little bit later, about the need for making sure that more students leave high school ready, not in need of remediation when they get to college. We know that about a third of our students enter college in need of remediation, and that our community college opens the doors to close to 70% of individuals needing remediation when they begin. So we'll talk about being ready, and then we'll talk about why we need to move that number from only about a third of our students graduating from college on time and only about a half graduating at all to numbers that are much higher than that if, in fact, we're going to realize our big goal. So I think we all need to do this together, and I think that's in addition to high school rates going up, college going rates going up. I think another bit of good news is that we're talking about it. So no longer do you have, pre-K through college talking in silos. So you have the K-12 sector talking and the higher ed sector talking, the Department of Workforce folks talking, and the economic development folks talking. But that, in fact, you have the linkage between all of those, represented, I'm sure, in this room today as well. Now, let me be quick to say, nothing matters as much as getting students off to a strong start. I mean, we can't turn our back on anybody. So if you're 60 years old and you're going back, we're still going to find a way to serve you and make sure that we can do something to help. But to the degree that we can get students off to a strong start, and many people in this room are probably engaged in that important work, it makes everything else down the road easier. But having said that, even if we got to our big goal of getting all of our students to leave high school ready for careers beyond high school, we still have 750,000 to 800,000 adults who need more education. And that is a different kind of student who we're serving as well. What that means is that the look of the college student is very different. You now have about 75% of the people who have some sort of post-secondary educational experience who are not living on a college campus. They're commuting, they're working, they're raising families, they're first generation, they're low income, they're minority. They're folks who perhaps in the past did not go to college. And that means that we have a redesign of higher education going on as well, which is much more student-centered rather than institution-centered, actually addressing the needs of our students. And so I think, now, we don't have fewer people living at the Bloomington campus. In fact, I saw the numbers today, which perhaps you did too, that IU's enrollment is the highest ever. So we still have people filling those residential campuses. It's just that we're filling it with so many more people going to college. And so that means that one size doesn't fit all. And the new traditional student is the student we used to call the non-traditional student. And we need to really keep that in mind as we're looking at a way to deal with the academic and financial preparations of our students. So that brings us to what you're doing. We can talk about it in Reaching Higher, Achieving More. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. But And the policies are critically important. And the support of the legislature for the funding of our programs and our buildings is very important. But what really is going to help us turn the corner is the work that you're doing to change the culture in Indiana. This is a culture shift where all of a sudden people start thinking, young people from the earliest time, that they can start thinking about dreaming, that they're thinking about going to college. And they're thinking it's for them, not just for somebody else. And so that's the work that you're doing as you come together as communities and as employers and as educators to say, how do we send that message? How do we provide the mentoring that we need? How do we help make sure that financially, through scholarships, our students can afford higher education? And how do we build this network at the community level, and then how does the commission and how do we help you do that at the state level? So I think these coalitions are critically important. Whether or not we're able to actually change this culture has more to do with what you do than it has to do with the words that we write on our papers. So with that, I think I probably exceeded my 10 minutes that I was supposed to use right at the beginning. We're going to turn over to our panel, and then I'll have a chance to come back up and talk to you a little more specifically about some state policies.